This video is going to go over AccuDraw. So AccuDraw can be used to assist in the drafting process. I think a lot of people overlook a lot of the capabilities of AccuDraw, so I wanted to highlight some of these cool features that AccuDraw has to offer. So I won't be going over every little detail because there is a lot to it, but hopefully enough to get you guys intrigued and start using it. So before we dive into AccuDraw itself, let's take a look at how we can toggle AccuDraw on and off. So if we go to the drawing workflow under the drawing aids, the first section is AccuDraw. Okay, so we'll go over some of these buttons, but this last one right here, toggle AccuDraw. This toggles it on and off. So right now I have the toolbar docked right here. So you might have it docked somewhere else, so you can have it floating. So if I toggle this button, it'll turn it off, and toggle turn it back on. And then the settings for AccuDraw, if I click this little button in the corner, I can open up AccuDraw settings. So there you can see some of the default settings like auto loading. If I go to the display, you can control some display things. I can open up the shortcut key-ins. That's where I think a lot of the cool features come into play, is utilizing these shortcuts. I'll go over some of these. I just want to mention the origin shortcut. So for people in ORD, you also probably have heard of Civil AccuDraw, which this video is not going to go over, but the O key by default was taken over by Civil AccuDraw in the default settings. So in regular AccuDraw, the O key didn't do anything, and you actually didn't have the origin for AccuDraw as a key in. So what we did in our standards is we added subkeys. So now there's A for setting the AccuDraw origin, and then there's C for setting the Civil AccuDraw origin. So if you guys are MicroStation users and you're not in OpenRes Designer, then your O key would just work the same way as this A key, and you wouldn't see these subkeys. Okay. All right. So let's start talking about or showcasing some of the functionality here. All right. So if I just want to say draw a line, and maybe I want to draw a line that's, I don't know, 50 feet, below the start of this line. All right. I could just draw a scratch line in and then draw another line in and then delete that line. But with AccuDraw, you don't have to do that. You don't have to draw scratch lines. So what I need to do first is I need to get my AccuDraw compass activated. So right now, when you go into the smart line or place or really any tool, AccuDraw doesn't have focus. So what you could do is hit F11 to give it focus, and you see how it highlighted. And then we want to set the origin for our AccuDraw. So we're going to hit O, and then like I mentioned earlier, we added these subkeys so that you could set the Civil AccuDraw origin or the AccuDraw origin. So in this case, we're in AccuDraw, so we're going to hit A. I now have my AccuDraw compass here. Okay, so some basics here is you notice as I move my cursor around, the X and Y in my AccuDraw are getting highlighted. So if I move my cursor down here, you'll see Y is being highlighted. So maybe I key in 50 here, and once I hit enter, it's going to lock that Y value, and now my Y value is being locked, so I can move my cursor all around, and it's going to keep that Y value at 50. All right. Another thing you could do is say you didn't know what the value was, and you knew you just wanted. So you clear when you clear out your Y value here and your X values, it'll clear out the lock, or you can use a key. So the Y key would unlock the Y value, or you could lock it again. So say I know I wanted it to come over here in the Y direction, I can just hit the Y key when I have my cursor there. It's going to lock that Y value for me, and now I can figure out what I want my X to be. All right, maybe I want my X to be 0, and then it would be right here. So some other things we can do is we can switch the mode to a polar mode. So if I hit the M key for mode, it's going to toggle me to polar mode, and now I can key in a distance and direction. So if I wanted to, just like the X and Y keys to lock X and Y, I can use the D key to lock the distance. So I hit the D, you see how my distance is locked. And I can hit the A key to lock or unlock it for the angle. I come here and I hit A and I lock the angle, right? So I haven't even drawn anything. I'm just showing all these different capabilities that we have, right? If you hit the X key to lock X value, it will switch your mode back to polar or rectangular mode. Same thing if you hit like D or A, it'll switch you back to that mode there. Okay. You can hit the tab key to toggle between your X and Y values here. So I'm hitting tab and you see how that's toggling back and forth. So maybe I do want my 50 feet down here. All right, and my X I'll just lock at 0, right? So I'll lock those values. So now I'm gonna data point. That's a left click here, and that is starting my line. So no need for a scratch line. I can start it right there, right? All right. So now maybe some other things. Maybe I want to go a certain direction and match an angle that's already drawn in here. So there's a lot of rotation options that you have for this as well. So one thing you can do is hit the R key and you can see all these different rotate options. So there's E for element, so I can hit E and I can actually click or hover over and you'll see how it's moving my compass to match kind of that angle. All right, so I can select this element and click, and now my compass has been rotated to match that, and now I can go off of that. My XY coordinate plane has been rotated, and you also notice as I come down here, I got that little horizontal bar that shows up. That's showing me that previous distance that I had used in the previous Y value. So I kind of, if I wanted to keep 50-foot increments, that is kind of telling me that's 50 foot. I can keep clicking. I could keep drawing this. Some other things, just to also mention, a lot of these key-ins that I'm talking about are up here, in here. Like there's some rotate buttons. I typically like to use the key-ins. I think it's faster that way. And you can always, and this will happen every now as you click off of here, you see how it lost focus. So sometimes you need to come back in here and give it focus again if you're clicking through the ribbon and what. But if you hit the shift and the question key in here, it'll open up that key in shortcut, and you can give us a look of all those different shortcuts that are available to you. There are some snapping in here too. So like, say I wanted to go to the center of this, I can hit C to switch my snap to the center. Things like that are easy to do in here. I won't go over 3D rotation, but this also has, if you're in a 3D model, you can set your compass to be like a side view, top view, a front view up here. A couple other things is, if you do rotate quick, so Q, you can kind of just have that rotate around. And then if you ever want to get it back, you can just hit the T key to get you rotated back. So you can also come in here and you can change the origin after you start. So I use that O key to get it started there, but maybe I want to base my line off of something over here. So I can come over here, get my cursor snapped to where I want. I can hit O and A, and now my compass is over here. So now I can do maybe 100 feet in the X direction from that location, and then I can click and place that. And since I'm in a smart line, I continue on, and you can still use like Control Z just to go back. So some other things that you can do is, you can still use all these different snaps down here. So if I wanted to, use the midpoint snap, that stuff's still gonna work. Another thing I wanted to show was the AccuDraw settings. So this greatly affects the way AccuDraw works. So I think it's important to run through these so you guys understand how it's being controlled. So the first one is just auto load, which does just that, auto loads AccuDraw. The next one, floating origin. So as we place anything, the origin is going to float to your previously clicked location. So you see how that compass is moving. So if I check this off and I click, there you can see it's no longer moving. Right? So that's floating origin. Content sensitivity, what that's most noticeable is the rotation of the compass. So you see how it's, top view here. When I move here, you see how it rotates that. Alright, so if I check off that and then I click, you notice how it's not rotating my compass. So that's what that's doing. Smart key-ins is actually pretty useful. So the way to show this is, so say I'm drawing a line here, and you notice as I go around, these x and y values are turning positive and negative, right? So with contact sensitivity, or smart key-ins, I'm sorry, with smart key-ins checked on, when you're in a quadrant here, it recognizes that you're in there. So right now it says the x is like negative 146. Now if I just key in like a positive 120, when I hit enter, you'll see it kept the negative there, it added it there, and that's because it knew that I was in that quadrant, right? So if I do that again with it off, you'll see if I just key in 120, it doesn't care about what quadrant I was in. It's going to go to the positive 120 every time. All right. So that's how smart key-ins are working. Auto placement, basically when you check it on, it will just place that point automatically once you lock in your values here. So say I key in a 120 for X and a 120 for Y. Now when I enter, since both of the constraints here will be set, it's going to automatically place that point for me. And you see there it did, it placed that point. So that's what auto point placement does. Sticky Z-lock is for when you're in a 3D, you get a Z option here. And so with this checked on, typically when you place a new point, it clears the locked values, right? So if I lock in a Y value and an X value, when I click, you see how it unlocks them. Well, with Sticky Z, even after you click and place that, when it moves on the next point, the Z value is locked. It doesn't unlock it. Always show compass, just, whenever you start a command, the compass just shows up there. You still have to give AccuDraw focus. So I don't know how useful that is. I guess it saves you from hitting an O, but it's most likely not going to go in the right spot. But keep in mind that F11 gives you AccuDraw focus. And then the autofocus fields it just sets up so like when you lock something. So say I'm in here, I'm going to draw this line, and you notice how my field that has focus is the angle. But if I hit the D key, it locks the distance and gives the distance focus, right? If I turn that off and I do the same thing, so I'm going to hit the D key, it locks the distance, but it does not give it focus. So see how the focus stayed on the angle. So that's what autofocus fields does. All right, so that's a quick rundown. Hopefully you guys found this informative. Learned a little bit about AccuDraw and what it can do.